As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt, just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $5, $6, $7, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out, no house payments for 2 months at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm pretty good. I'm trying to get ready for this big snowstorm here in Jacksonville, and the city is panicking. They don't have the equipment to take care of the roads. My housekeeper's scared to death to get out of her house. She ain't here today. She's supposed to come on Tuesdays. Not here. So it is what it is. In Jacksonville Beach. It's going to be interesting to see the snowfall on the beach. I've never seen that, I don't think. You, Conrad, you seen that before?
No, man, it's happening right now at my place in Pensacola. I've got some friends down there who are sending me stuff. They're doing snowball fights on the beach, which feels surreal. It's a crazy time in the world here, and it's a crazy time to be a wrestling fan because JR is headed across the pond.
I am.
Inside the Ropes is thrilled to announce yet another tour with the voice of professional wrestling, good old JR. The WWE Hall of Famer is going to sit down with Inside the Ropes and tell his stories on stage in the UK. And each night, JR is going to go through lots of big moments, matches, and memories from his time in the WWE, plus a whole lot more. And of course, no Inside the Ropes live show would be complete without the VIP experience that Inside the Ropes is known for. So before each show, JR is going to be doing photo ops and signing autographs, and this is going down on January 30th in London, on January 31st in Manchester, and on February 1st in Glasgow. And all your ticket information is available right now at itrwrestling.com. Jim, we had a blast with Kenny McIntosh and his crew a few years ago, right before the pandemic. I'm glad you're getting to make another one of these. And as you said last week, hey, this might be the last one, right?
Well, you never know. You know, I'm 73 now. I know I don't look it.
Not at all.
But I'm excited to go back. I'm not excited about the flight. It's Jacksonville to Dallas, Dallas to London, and so it'll be sleepy time for JR. Maybe an edible or two will put me down.
Roll Tide.
I miss it. I miss the Tide in the football playoffs, Conrad. There's teams that didn't get there, and the game kind of disappointed me. I was pulling sentimentally for Notre Dame. I don't know why. I was born in a Catholic hospital, but that's about the size of my Catholic relationship. But I thought I picked Ohio State to win, but I thought, boy, this is missing something. And it was missing Alabama. And now they're talking that the Big Ten, which is ridiculous, because there's not 10. There's how many fucking teams are in the Big Ten? Like 20. But they're saying now that the top conference in college football is no longer the SEC. It is the Big Ten. And I have a hard time agreeing with that.
Yeah, well, I would disagree with that too. I mean, I think 4 of the top 6, even in basketball right now, are SEC, but that's the story for another day. The story right now is if you're listening across the pond, go grab those tickets, itrwrestling.com, January 30th in London, January 31st in Manchester, and February 1st in Glasgow. If you've never been to one of Kenny McIntosh's Inside the Rope shows, I encourage you, go out of your way to go see this one. Jim is going to deliver the goods. He's going to tell you stories that, well, he has never told before and he can't tell anywhere else. To be honest with you, as JR would say, he's all out of F's to give. So he's going to drop some nuggets on you that maybe he would have played close to the vest. He just did that a few weeks ago with the whole Sonny bombshell. And, you know, when that all happened years ago, you and I were friendly and you told me about it, but I was sort of shocked you brought it up on the show. But hey, listen, you're letting some of these secrets out, and people are going to hear things at these Inside the Rope shows that you've never said before, Jim.
Yeah, they kind of it gets out there. You know, you're. What about? Well, here's a good story. the stories are all created by the audience. Whatever they want to talk about is what I will talk about. The Q&As are stimulating. I love to do the photo ops before the show and sign the autographs, sign their stuff, and that's cool. So it's a big package deal. Before the show starts, we'll do some Q&A, or excuse me, we'll do the photo ops, autographs, and all that good stuff. I enjoy that. And the UK fans are very knowledgeable, and they'll bring up stuff that I hadn't thought about in years, which stimulates my pea brain to telling a story about it. There's nothing they can ask me that won't relate to a story that connects it. So it's there's a method to the madness, I guess you would say, and but it's going to be fun. A lot of laughs, a lot of oh, I didn't know that type stuff. So it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to have a full English breakfast at least twice, because I like beans for breakfast.
Oh,
Lord. They have those beans for breakfast. I enjoy that. And they also have eggs, but I enjoy the big English breakfast. It's good stuff. So, and we're staying in a hotel that's got a restaurant. I hadn't even checked that out. I hope so. It's funny what you think about when you're traveling. Does the hotel have a restaurant? Or are we staying in a dipshit, just go lay down and go to sleep and forget about it? I like to have breakfast, and we'll see how it works out. I'll have a full report later.
Can't wait to hear about that hotel breakfast. Go hear the rest of JR stories right now at itrwrestling.com. And Jim, it's not just this international tour that you've got on the books, but on March 7th, before we know it, the Queen of the Ring is going to be in theaters.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty excited about this. We now know that, man, what a cast of characters. Jack Pfeffer, if you're not familiar with that name, boy, he was one of the more interesting figures in wrestling history. And he's played by one of my favorite actors in this movie, Walton Goggins. We've also got Camille from AEW playing June Byers. Tony Storm from AEW is going to play Clara Mortensen. Trinity Fatu is going to play Ethel Johnson. How about the Sensei from Karate Kid? You've seen him on Cobra Kai. Martin Cove, he's in the movie, as well as Britt Baker, who's going to play Debbie Nichols. But Sam Mushnick, the old NWA commissioner, is going to be played by Jim Cornette, and we've got a trailer. Let's take a look.
Oh, honey.
I had a bad dream.
Only dreams that we make come true are real. We're gonna wish away all those bad thoughts.
1, 2, 3.
I promise you, my son, our lives together will be special.
Where's your little boy's father, anyway?
Mr. I ain't gonna marry no circus freak.
He done let me over this.
Billy Wolf! I'm really curious to see what you can do with her.
You barely know him. He's the only man that's ever believed in my dream.
We got a job to do tonight. You go out there, you wrestle your heart out.
Maybe we can headline arenas. I know that we can.
I want to talk to you about putting 2 of my girls on your card.
My main event is heavyweights and their name.
Why would anyone want to limit the spectacle of competition based on gender?
Looks like we're cleaning up every night of the week now. It's got me thinking, Billy.
I want us secure as equal partners.
Then do what's right for business.
Honor the deal or we shoot.
You will do what I say, or you will find yourself cleaning toilets in some arena after my show comes through.
Mom, all the tickets you 2 ever sold had your name on them, not his.
Mr. McMahon.
How can I get a guarantee that my ladies can wrestle in the state of New York?
Let's show them how we do it in the South.
Come on, Mom, get up. Remember. 1, 2.
actually the highest paid female athlete.
In Washington?
In history.
Holy cow, what a trailer, man. That's getting you fired up right there, isn't it, Jim?
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. You know, the Mildred had a working relationship with Leroy McGurk, my first boss. Leroy told me all kinds of stories, which I shared with Ash Avildsen, who put this thing together. And that's why I'm one of the executive producers. But the backstory, and I don't know how closely we cover that, but the backstory was Billy Wolf had his son start driving Mildred. And that's not all the son did. Billy wanted Mildred and the son to have sex so that Billy could, continue his dalliances. Billy loved the women, and Mildred was just one of many that he serviced. I remember I asked Mae Young about it, and she said something along the lines of, he had a big dick, but he couldn't get it hard. And I was kind of shocked by that Mae would share that intimate information with me. But it's a hell of a story, man. She was a single woman. That's wrong, Connie. That's truth. And the Connie's shaking there. He's jiggling when he's giggling.
I just, listen, I never know what to expect when we click record, but I've heard all those words before, but I've just never heard them touch on a podcast,
I'm sorry.
No, I love it. I'm not upset. I'm not throwing the flag. I desperately wish we had a Blue Chew sponsorship this week. I could easily transition right now. I mean, you've done all the heavy lifting for me, but I'm fired up for the movie, Jim. That trailer was badass, man. I hope you're proud of that. You should be.
I'm very proud. They've done a great job with it. It's a hell of a story. Single mom, no money, but had a great physique, like an athletic physique. Had, you saw those double bicep posters that she did were pretty amazing. I always thought that Mildred was the model, for lack of a better term, of the double bicep pose during the war. Be strong and all this stuff. We can do all this together.
Yeah, we can do it and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So but she was something special and tough. But the psychology of this, having Mae Young there as her policeman, making sure that she didn't get killed by some, the same thing that Luthez told me back in the day. He had guys go into a territory. Somebody would sneak a little stiff stuff on him so that if they could be the champion, they automatically raise their level of pay immensely, change their life. If you could shoot and beat Lou, that never happened. And I asked Lou, I said, what did you do about that? He said, I found them, and they found themselves in a double wrist lock, and they quit screwing around. It was a brutal world. It's totally unlike the sports entertainment that we all enjoy today. It was some real shit. And so they had to protect Mildred because she was the golden girl. She sold the tickets, and that's all that mattered. So she lost 50. She had to put up 50 grand to go to the NWA meeting that McGurk arranged. McGurk got the 50 grand, as I understand it, for the alliance. And then when she got there, they had no time for a meeting. She just lost $50,000. And that's a lot of money in any era. But then it was a tremendous amount of cash. So it's got a great story, and it's all true. I think wrestling fans will love it, especially if you do a little bit of online research. You'll find out that it's you'll understand it better. But it's a hell of a show. I think it's a sleeper, and we might be able to do some real good business with this thing. So it's a hell of a movie. I seen the movie, and I was astonished. I'd love to see it again. So I'm proud of it. And it's probably the only movie I'll ever do in my lifetime that has this much texture. It's real. So we'll see. But I think that's coming out in March. Is that what you said, Conrad?
March 7th. Yes, sir. I know my wife and I, we're going to be at the movie theater that day watching it. We hope you guys will be too. Queen of the Ring, man, coming out March 7th. In the meantime, by the way, I wanted to give JR a little pro tip. Jim, before you get on the big bird across the pond,
Yeah.
I recommend that you stock up on the perfect jean. And if you can hear my voice, it's time you update your wardrobe for 2025 as well. Because these jeans from the perfect jean, well, they're going to be your closet's MVP. Whether your resolutions this year to shed some weight, gain some muscle, or just embrace the awesome body you've already got. With a new revamped wardrobe, these jeans are there every step of the way. It's great for date night, but sharp enough to wear to work and also comfortable enough to wear every day. And comfort is what it's all about. You see, the perfect jean has saved over 700,000 pairs of nuts and their owners from stiff, unforgiving denim. And that number is growing up every day. If you're aiming to dress better, but you want to be comfortable, and this feels like you're lounging after the gym, that's how comfortable these are. Start the year with zero wardrobe stress thanks to the perfect jean. They've got 6 fits with waists that go from 26 to 50 and lengths that go 26 to 38. There's more than 5,000 combinations to match your goals. Whether you're bulking, you're cutting, you're just living your best life, these jeans make it effortless to look and feel perfect all year long. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or just Google the perfect jean and be sure to use our code JR15 for 15% off. By the way, the perfect jean doesn't just stop there. They've revolutionized t-shirts as well. The perfect tee has just enough stretch to hide the old beer belly, but also accentuates your arms and chest for that flawless look. It's as soft as butter without shrinking in the wash like all your other tees. It really is just perfect. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls. Get some uncomfortable jeans out of there. Go get the perfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and even free exchanges when you use our code JR15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with the promo code JR15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the perfect jean.
I'm wearing a t-shirt from that company today.
It's great stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's right here. It fits great. It's not binding. It's got the material is soft and flexible. It's good shit. So a good company, folks. And you try a pair. That's what I suggest. Make it easy. Don't overthink it. Just try a pair. I think you'll agree. It's what you've been waiting for.
Well, what we've been waiting for is to pick up our conversation where we left off. We're talking about 1994. You've just left the WWF for the second time in August of 94. I guess technically your 2-month contract just wasn't renewed, but nonetheless, you find your career in flux and you wind up going back to work with your old pal, Jim Cornette. Smoky Mountain introduces a new segment called Confrontation with Jim Ross. He's going to be using you to debut as the new television announcer along with Les Thatcher. So I guess that means Bob Caudle is out. And
that was sad, Conrad, to be honest with you. I love Bob Caudle with all my heart. He just had a big anniversary last week.
Made the Today Show, I think.
Yeah, I did. That's that scene, that shot was just touched my heart. But Les Thatcher did a great job. Les was a good announcer. He had product knowledge, and he adapted to the television screen very well. In other words, he knew how to talk in sound bites and give you viable information. Les wrestled for years and years and coached a lot of kids, taught a lot of kids. So he understood the business. And I thought he and I made a good pair. It was fun working with him and fun working with Cornette. You know, Cornette had that. Cornette's a great booker. He was a great booker, great writing television. So I enjoyed that little run. And ironically, Conrad, that was all arranged with Vince. Vince encouraged me to go back to go to Smoky Mountain and get back in the saddle, so to speak. And I did, and it worked out beautifully.
Let's talk about this segment, confrontation. I guess the idea is you're going to do an interview, but if anybody has any sort of physical violence in the middle of this interview, so if we've got two guys who are in the middle of a feud, you're going to sit down and try to have them talk it out. And if anyone resorts to violence, they're going to be fined or suspended. What do you think of that? That's an interesting idea. Confrontation with Jim Ross.
Well, I thought it was fun. You know, I enjoyed it. We did several of those little segments, and the talents loved it because they could get a little physical, but still have the mic time to express themselves. And there's where I started really feeling, you know, back in the old days, it was when I was working for Cowboy, I'd do an interview. You basically just introduced the guest, and then the guest would go from there without any interaction. We had interaction on this show, and it was kind of revolutionary because nobody else is really doing it to that degree.
Let's talk just a little bit about the Smoky Mountain opportunity. You had worked for Smoky Mountain before on the Night of Legends Super Show in Knoxville. That felt like a one-off. And then after this short-term WWE deal isn't renewed, you're back on the phone with Jim Cornette working things out. You mentioned that Vince had encouraged you. What was your relationship like with Jimmy back here in 1994?
It's good. It's always been good. I don't always agree with his booking, but that's natural and normal and predictable. So that interview there was recorded in Atlanta, where Jan and I were living at the time. We bought a condo there, and we were out on the porch of it, so to speak. And Corny would drive down and do things like you're seeing here on the screen. It was good stuff, fun. He was fun to be with. He was fun to have lunch with. He was never dull, and I really enjoyed the Smoky Mountain experience. It was good for me, good for my ego, good for my soul. I got back in the game. I got a jersey. I got to play a little bit more that I didn't think I would.
Let me ask you about Bob Caudle. You said that broke your heart. I wanted to ask, do you think Bob was already on his way out, or did Jim have to make the unfortunate decision of choosing between the two of you, and he had to deliver bad news to Bob?
I think he was on his way out. It was a hell of a drive from Raleigh to Smoky Mountain cities, because we were here in little places. I think Connie, he was on his way out, and Jimmy liked Les, and for good reason. He was great. So, but it was just hard to see Bob drive off, so to speak, and not be there for this. Bob was a great partner. He could adapt really well. He was so nice to me. You know, he was the voice of Mid-Atlantic Wrestling forever. And so I come in when I went to work and just stuff for Crockett. I was the lead announcer. He never said one word. He never showed any dissatisfaction. He was just an amazing human being. And thank God for Bob Caudle. He's been a gift to wrestling, without question.
Let's talk a little bit about Les Thatcher. You're going to be doing commentary with him. How do you think you worked with Les? How was he as a broadcast partner?
Good. He was good. It didn't take us very long, Conrad, to find our groove. And that's thanks to Les, because he also acquiesced. He was working with a great veteran, one of the great voices of all time, and Bob Caudle. Now he's got JR before JR was JR. It was just good. It was good. Early on in our relationship, we were clicking. It was good stuff. I really enjoyed it. And Cornette wrote great TV. He gave us material to work with. and I really truly enjoyed it.
Let's talk a little bit about where we are with the Les Thatcher today, because I do think that maybe Les's contributions to wrestling are often overlooked. I mean, I think almost everyone listening to this, even younger fans, know that he's done podcasts and he had a wrestling school.
Yeah,
but he was a star wrestler in the Southeast. He worked on designing and then editing and printing programs and magazines for various territories. He's even the lead announcer for the Fullers in Knoxville.
yeah.
He helps produce television there, and he even introduces some things like instant replay and personality profiles outside of the ring that nobody had really done before. But all that sort of gets lost to history because it was in the territories and not one of the big territories. I don't think Les Thatcher is given enough credit. What say you?
I agree wholeheartedly. He had many contributions that were ahead of their time that people use now as a matter of fact. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. You know, everybody uses instant replay. Just what it is. It's good TV. And Les had that vision and that foresight before anybody else. So very bright guy. Had a great feel for the business, and I really embraced my time with Les, and he made me better, and that was really important for me at that time. He made me better.
I do want to ask you about a report here in the Observer from October. This is October 10th, 94. Morale seems to be up after the last television because Ron West, Cactus Jack, and Jim Ross were there and everything ran smoothly. It looks like Boo Bradley is being groomed to be a major character babyface. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ron West is a veteran office manager who had worked for various different territories as a referee and helped be an advocate in the office. And that would have meant working alongside you back in the Mid-South days. Was it your idea to bring him in here, or how does he get this gig in Smoky Mountain?
All Cornette, man. All Corny. It was his brainchild. Ronnie could do a lot of things. He's smart enough. Those old timers in the territories were smart enough to have more than one tool in their toolbox. And Ron had several. And he also was one of the best referees in the country, maybe the best, certainly rivaling anybody. I don't know if anybody was better than Ron West as a referee. So he was good. He was really good, and he contributed a lot. And he's been on TBS, and that made, he has some awareness, has some name identity. So Ronnie was good referee, and made the shows better.
I wanted to ask you, we mentioned that you're at the show and so is Ron West and Cactus Jack, and the television taping goes smoothly. This is you sort of hooking up again with Cactus Jack after you guys did some time together in WCW. You've been around the business for a while at this point, the territory days, big corporate wrestling with Turner, even working in New York with Vince. So you've sort of done it all and checked all the boxes. And I know what an advocate you were for Cactus Jack, and you were a big believer in him. But I've always wanted to ask, like, when you find yourself working in Smoky Mountain and you're sharing time or spending time in the orbit of Cactus Jack, a guy who just quit WCW and walked away from a guaranteed money contract, he bet on himself, but he left the safety and security of a guaranteed contract. You're Mr. I got my jersey back. I got to have a jersey. I got to get back in the game. And he walked away from it. What did you think of that in 94? And what do you think about his decision to leave WCW and go fully independent with the benefit of hindsight in 2025?
Well, it's not a surprise if you know Mick. Mick wanted to be happy. He had goals. He had a vision for himself. And it was just really cool stuff. I always have been a fan of Mick. I read recently where he's lost 100 pounds. Did you see that online?
I did, yes.
Lost 100 pounds. That's a lot of weight to lose, man.
It is, man. He's putting in the work. Good for him.
Yeah, he's dieting and doing I think he's working some with
He's doing DDT yoga. He's doing some work in
yeah.
the pool. Yeah, he's putting in the work, man. I'm proud for him.
Yeah, me too. He's a swell guy, good guy, and can't find a better guy. That's why I brought him back to WWE when I was in a position to help facilitate that, because he's the kind of guy you want in your locker room. He's positive. He's generally happy. He understood the business, and I just admire so many of his traits. He was willing to help young talents. He had great psychology, lifelong fan. It's funny how you find a lifelong fan and how much they can contribute. And he kept reinventing himself. I always admired that. Kept reinventing himself. So I love Mick Foley. He's a good man. And I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him. I don't know that he's going to be back in the saddle as far as wrestling is concerned. In the ring, I don't feel that, but it might happen. You never know. But he certainly is a great character. He's a great television personality. He still can contribute. But the good thing and the best thing of this whole deal is the fact that he has lost 100 pounds, and the fact that he is getting healthier. You know, and his health is our number one thing, and he's doing something about that. And I really admire him for his dedication to lose all that weight. That's a ton of weight, Conrad. That's a lot of pounds. 100 pounds. Can you imagine that?
He's putting in the work, man. Shout out to Mick Foley. I wanted to ask you about this show that airs on October 15th. It's written about in the Observer as being a quote unquote 100% improvement, not only in announcing, but in lighting, editing, and production. They've also reduced the number of local interview segments on the show from 3 to 2. And now instead they're plugging the new Smoky Mountain 900 line, which is going to be led by you. Talk to me about what changes, if any. Did you have any fingerprints on the way television looked and felt in the new format? And what do you remember about the Smoky Mountain Hotline you can share with us?
Well, I had a little bit to do with it, you know, as a talent and giving ideas like a producer would. So I gave Corny some ideas, just brainstorming. But at the end of the day, it's his decision. And he made good decisions. Corny is a good wrestling guy. Corny had worked for some of the great bookers in the history of the business. Jerry Jarrett, you know, was one. Cowboy certainly was one. And so Corny learned from all those guys, and he soaked all that knowledge in, and then added his own spin to it. Jim Cornette's a very, very bright guy. And in that era, he was very motivated and focused. So we had a good team there. We had a real good. Everybody seemed to get along. That was really refreshing.
Let's talk a little bit about the 900 line. You know, we saw Mean Gene jump ship from the WWF to WCW in November of '93, and allegedly one of the things he works out is the new WCW hotline, and it is going to be a boon for him. He's going to be making a bunch of money on that hotline. Did you work out a similar deal with Cornette that, hey, this is working for WCW and the WWF, why don't we do it and we'll split it? Or how does that become?
That could not have happened. I wasn't in a position like Gene was, smart enough to negotiate it, but I had I contributed, to say it that way. But I don't recall having a financial stake in it, and I might be wrong. It was just so long ago. But it wasn't the kind of money that Gene made on a bigger stage in Atlanta. So Gene made a good deal. You know, the story of that was funny. Vince put out he may have told Howard Finkel, I'm not sure. But I think Vince put out a little trailer that he's going to keep Gene. He's too valuable. and that gave WCW more motivation to hire him. It's how the story goes that I've heard. And so when Gene got there, he was very wanted and very lucrative in potentially. You know, not only his presence on television, but the hotline stuff was pretty cool. I made them a lot of money when I was there on the hotline. I think my day was Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, back in those days. And I made them a lot of money. I didn't make me any money. They didn't pay me anything extra, which was my fault. I should have asked for a taste of the pie that we were baking, but I didn't. I was just happy as hell to have a friggin' job and to be there. But I underestimated my own worth. Gene didn't. And I did a version of that in WCW as well. But again, I didn't get a piece of the action, and which is, I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming anybody. It's just, I should have asked for it and negotiated it. And I'm sure something could have been worked out.
It's interesting to even think about a 900 line now. I mean, that almost feels like a foreign concept for some of our younger listeners, but it's been said to me that besides the sex hotlines, pro wrestling hotlines were maybe the most consistent moneymaker on the 900 lines. And I know that there was the psychic readings too. So I guess it's sex lines, psychic readings, and pro wrestling. Like, what in the world, right?
Yeah, you're right. It was interesting how that worked, but the talents that are on the line, they give a little bit of dirt. They would stir the water, stir the shit, if you will. I know Missy did a day. I'm sure she did well. I can't remember who else is all on it. I'm sure Cornette was on his own 900 number, but I had fun doing it. You just had a day of the week. You go on and record, and there you go. So it was kind of easy to produce, but you had to produce your own content. And generally, the smart money was to try to do something that was going to tie back into the TV show. And at the end of the day, the money was in promoting things that were going to sell tickets, because that was our primary source of income, selling tickets. It wasn't TV rights or anything like that, like AEW and WWE have today, where their stations are paying them exorbitant amounts of money, many might say, to air their product. It was just a reversal. Whereas back in the day, if you didn't have a barter deal, which is, we'll put our show on your station in exchange for time and that kind of a deal, the airtime. But it was interesting times, but it did do well. I wish, I'd love to hear Corny's thoughts on that at some point in time. But he was, he did really well, I think, in that deal. I think everybody did really well, but it was short-lived. But the 900 numbers, a simple way of creating some cash flow.
Well, it's all about the cash flow. And man, people are loving the new TV show. They're loving the bumpers coming in and out of breaks. They're loving the little trivia notes. And even Wade is saying that you're really putting over the importance of the storylines and helping getting those angles over even more than Bob Caudle could. And maybe some of that is because Bob had gotten a little more low key, and you were still, out there doing your thing. And speaking of you doing your thing, go ahead.
I was just hustling, Connie. I wanted to make Cornette's business as strong as I could, because I knew that would help extend my stay there. And those, I wasn't making a lot of money. I think Corny paid me $300 a show to come do them, and that included my transportation and whatever else I spent. But the late Dennis Brent would travel with me right along, so I'd leave Atlanta and go to the various places in Smoky Mountain by my car, and Dennis would ride along shotgun or drive if I needed him to. And then we would go. Off we would go to our little adventure. And that's kind of how I looked at it. It was kind of an adventure. I'd made money in WWE. Jan was a flight attendant, so she had regular money coming in. I enjoyed that time of my life. It was exciting. It was different things were going on. It was neat stuff. So I was blessed to have that opportunity. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to work with Cornette. Working with Corny was not new to me. When Corny was a talent in Mid-South, he helped book his own angles. He'd give Cowboy and ideas, which is what a talent should always do. I get sick of listening to these talents talk about, well, I'm being held down. Oh, fuck, you're not being held down. God almighty. Why would the booker hold down somebody that can make him more money? I don't understand that concept. So maybe you just look in the mirror, and maybe you should suggest some ideas that are realistically money makers and that make sense instead of bitching about it. Come up with something. Have an idea. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. And Cornette was just great at that. He never had a lack of ideas. And I guarantee you, if I owned a wrestling company today, he would be on my team, and he would be. I'd be listening to his suggestions, not just on his talents that he was managing, but everybody. He's that good, and he's still that good.
I want to talk to you a little bit about announcing for a minute here, because it's in the Observer where they're given praise and kudos. Actually, no, it's Fighting Spirit magazine. They're praising the When Worlds Collide pay-per-view, which was the debut of Mike Tenay as a color commentator. And Chris Cruz is actually calling the show. And everyone is praising the job they did.
Yeah.
And it's written here that Chris Cruz had some feedback. We sat, and Jim Ross was critiquing me match by match and point by point. One thing he said that really struck me, and this is true, is that I peaked too soon. That I was so excited to be there, so happy to be the announcer on a pay-per-view, that I really got too heavy in the first couple of matches and didn't build up to it. Here I am sitting in Jim Ross's house with Dennis Brent, and I'm getting play-by-play critiques from him. I was overjoyed. I thought this was such a cool thing because, listen, man, there's a lot of people in wrestling, or hell, just in life and in business, where it's like, hey, I want everybody to do well, just not better than me. Right. And sometimes when there's only a handful of spots as a professional wrestling announcer, man, people get pretty tore up about that. We've actually seen some tweets about that recently. And here you are saying, hey, man, let me help you out. Here's what you could do better. Tell me about this. What do you remember about this?
Well, I gave some basic fundamental suggestions, sound bites, connect the dots, don't leave people hanging. Don't do that. But get comfortable in your own skin, so to speak. But listening to your partner is also very, very a key element. And he was a good student in that respect. Smart guy. But I know in that show you're talking about, he got a little wordy in the beginning, as he admitted, and then he settled in. So, but I was happy to help him. I'm happy to help anybody. I help guys now. You want the business to perpetuate and to extend. And so I had a lot of knowledge from experience. Not that I was that smart, but I had a lot of knowledge in that area. And all I did was share it with him, share what I knew, and share what I thought would help him.
Well, we're going to share what we think will help you have a little more fun, because the big game is almost here and it's now or never. So don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks. It's the very best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. You can now win up to $1,000 extra money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks truly is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. I'm a big fan of this. I'm into it. My cousins are into it. Everybody at the office is talking about it. We're Prize Picks loyalists. They even invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. In fact, Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And man, with the conference championship games ahead of us this weekend, there's some fun stuff happening. Man, the Bills and the Chiefs, Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. What's Barkley and Hurts going to do for the Eagles? And are they ready for what the Commanders are bringing to town? I'm going to have a blast with it. You will too. Here's how it works, man. I think this quarterback's going to get more than those many yards. I think this running back is going to get fewer than this amount of yards. Bam, you're locked in. All types of different player stat projections. And all you got to do is snag 2. Come on now, download the app today and use the code GrillingJR, and you get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the Prize Picks app today and use the code GrillingJR to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a hell of a deal too, Connie. You know, get $50 instantly. It's a cool thing. I can give you some tips on this game.
Now hang on now. This is not professional betting advice, folks. I need to just tell you, JR's just having a little fun right now.
That's all.
Yeah.
I'm not a professional. I believe that the quarterback for the Commanders will have significant yards rushing. He's that athletic.
Jaden Daniels is the man.
Yeah, I'm just saying, my gut tells me he could be the difference maker in this game by his legs and not his arm. But I would never go against. I love Andy Reid. Us fat guys stick together, man. We do. And Andy Reid is such an amazing big game coach that he'll have his team ready, the Chiefs ready. One of my best friends plays center for the Chiefs, Creed Humphrey, and he Oklahoma boy. Shawnee played at OU. I got to know him over the years real well. So I think Jaden Daniels is going to is a difference maker. We'll see. We'll soon know. But I'm not picking against the Chiefs. But I think Jaden Daniels is going to scare the shit out of Chiefs fans with his legs. That's what I think.
So that's what you think for the Super Bowl. You think it's going to be Chiefs and Commanders?
Not the Super Bowl.
Well, Jaden Daniels is playing. Hurts and the Eagles this weekend. Go to Prize Picks. Go download it right now. Get $50 instantly once you play $5. All you got to do is be sure to check it out. PrizePicks.com/GrillingJR, or just use that code GrillingJR.
I apologize. I got my teams mixed up. There's four teams left.
That's right.
And Jaden Daniels is coming in hot.
Yes, he is, man. 4 touchdowns in postseason, no interceptions, 69% completion.
Yeah.
He's lighting it up right now.
He is. He's hotter than donut grease.
Did you see what he's doing to get a competitive advantage? Have you seen this?
No.
He's working with some developers, and he's wearing some like virtual reality goggles, and they're simulating the speed of the game. So if he knows he's playing this team, then he's going to play that team, and on the goggles, the team is going to be moving 1.75 speed, so almost twice as fast as they normally would.
Wow.
And they're programming this to have the different defenses. So if the team he's going to play runs cover 3, they're running cover 3. So that entire week, he's training with these goggles, getting ready for them. So by the time he sees it in real life, he's seen it in the goggles all week. Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing. Yeah, that's good information. I just think he's to me, the playoffs are like March Madness. Who's hot right now? March Madness is that way in my view. the teams that are hot at that time are the ones you want to hang your hat on. So, but their team is hot, and he may be the hottest player in the entire National Football League. But I do think his legs are going to make a difference in that game against the Eagles.
I can't wait. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be even more fun with Prize Picks.
Yep.
Hey, let's talk about something that Mark Madden's doing in the Torch. It's reported here that he went on the WCW 900 line and said this line, which became popular in the front office at WCW. The three faces of fear are the most evil, diabolical faces to hit WCW since the two faces of Jim Ross.
Oh, God.
Despite Hogan pushing for Madden's dismissal, Madden will remain on WCW's 900 line for the time being and likely continue to rip Hogan whenever he feels it's deserved. You know, I've never heard you guys. I mean, I didn't know you and Mark Madden had a beef, but I guess Madden's had a beef with almost everybody at some point. What was the issue with you and Mark?
I don't know. I don't know that I had one, Connie. You know, he's the Pittsburgh boy, so I've had Jan and I, when we visit Pittsburgh to see her family, we had dinner with Mark on more than one occasion. I don't know what his issue was. I didn't have time to investigate it, but I don't know off the top of my head that we had an issue. I mean, I know that on my messages, I got a nice message from Mark on my birthday here lately. So January 3rd. So I don't know what that would be. I don't know. I really don't know what his issue is. I always admired his work, and I did his radio show in studio many times. So must not have been that bad.
Let's talk about television. It's December 17th, and there's a Torch review of Smoky Mountain TV. Dirty White Boy is saying that he signed a contract to wrestle a mystery wrestler who's represented by his sports agent from California. And here comes Buddy Landell wearing a suit, attacking the Dirty White Boy from behind. He puts a plastic bag over his head to suffocate him. You're on commentary saying this reminds you of the 1989 incident with Ric Flair and Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Eventually, the Rock and Roll Express come out and make the save. And on this same episode, you're going to sit down with the Rock and Roll Express and you're squaring off against them. You're upset that they think it's okay to trust Jim Cornette. And you're encouraging them to break ties with Jim Cornette. And you're going to rattle off a list of reasons they should.
Wow.
And Cornette blinded them with foreign objects or stole titles from them. And you rattle it all off from Mid-South to Jim Crockett Promotions and other territories. And by the time you finish with the list, the Midnight or the Rock and Rolls here, they're sort of looking concerned themselves, like, oh, maybe we did jump into this. And then here comes Cornette, who's going to tell you to mind your own damn business. And I got these two jerks to sign the papers. And then, of course, Ricky Morton is like, wait, who are you calling a jerk? Cornette apologized, backs it down, says, hey, it was a poor choice of words. Ross just really got me upset. But you guys can trust me. And the Rock and Rolls agree, okay, we're going to stick with Cornette. But, man, there's going to be hell to pay if you double cross us. This is a fun segment. And people were writing about this show as if this was a really big deal for Smoky Mountain. What do you remember of this little piece of business here?
Cornette produced the shit out of it. That's Cornette's idea. Some of the lines I used, he would give me thoughts like, you might want to say this, or you might want to go here on this train of thought. That was all Jim Cornette producing and suggesting. I just took it from there and added my own stuff to it, and it worked out fine. But those were fun to do. We never rehearsed them. They knew that we're going to do we're going to do a 3-minute interview or 3-minute segment, whatever it might be. And I don't know if it's 3 minutes, but it might have been. And so that was all out of his head. I just took what he suggested to me, put it in my own words, and started firing. But I had fun doing those. And I love doing them, Connie. It was fun when they were not rehearsed. That kills spontaneity. And I've seen talents now that have to do a promo. Over the years, I've seen it where they would go stand in the corner and rehearse what they're going to say. And I always was against that because you don't know how the audience is going to react. You don't know how everybody involved is going to react. Just go with your instincts. Go with your instincts and make it as real and natural as possible. And so that's what we did. And but those were fun to do. Now that's old school pro wrestling. Those old timers didn't rehearse shit. They didn't. They just went with their guts, and it worked out real well. So that was some fun stuff to do, I can tell you.
We should take a minute and talk about what happened next, but more importantly, how it happened. The Observer would report just a week after this report about how great this television angle was in Smoky Mountain. With regards to the WWF, Jim Ross was rehired to work in the booking department and to produce television. He won't be doing any announcing, however. Apparently, Pat Patterson is going to cut down on his workload, and Ross is being brought back in to pick up the slack. Pretty much everyone in wrestling was amazed because of the general philosophical differences in regard to what the wrestling product should be between Ross and Patterson. But if you understand wrestling and those individuals, it makes perfect sense. Ross is supposed to stick around Smoky Mountain as a television announcer since it only requires 1 day per month, even though he's going to work full time with Titan and move to Connecticut. So listen, this is all going to change very quickly, we know. But who reaches out to you originally? And do you think that the call came because Patterson really was looking to leave, or was it based on they saw what a quick difference you had made with Smoky Mountain Television?
I think Vince was the one that spearheaded that, Connie. I think Pat was getting a little older. Still had a lot of fuel in the tank, but he was getting a little older. Wanted to slow down a little bit. I think Vince was impressed by what others around him saw at Smoky Mountain and the difference that I was trying to make and how that was all working out. So it was a good phone call. I got a significant raise from $300 a day or $350 a night or whatever it was. It wasn't much money for a month's worth of work, shall we say. But Cornette didn't have the budget to pay me what I thought I was worth. And I wasn't blaming him. He did, if you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't. And he didn't. So I took what was there. And I remember later on in that relationship, when I was making my checks out of WWE, they were flying me on their dime to Smoky Mountain to do TV. And I didn't even take Cornette's money. I just wanted to help him. So I did it for nothing for a while. And I had no regrets on doing that. I was helping a friend out, and I was invested emotionally in the product. So I don't know. Sometimes you just want to do things that you feel like are right. And thank God Jan had a job and we could pay our grocery bill.
When you get the call from Vince and he's asking you to come back, but he's making it clear he doesn't want you to do commentary.
That was made very clear. I don't want you on the air. I want you to produce. I want your brain. And so me and my brain went back to work.
Were you disappointed?
No, because I knew it was not going to last long.
Okay.
I knew that at some point, he's going to put me back on the air because of what I perceive my abilities in that area. And so I just was a good soldier. On time, I was there. I moved, all that good stuff. Vince paid for that. So Jan and I moved to Connecticut, and that's the story of that deal. It was, I knew when he started paying all these bills and all this stuff, you're not going to pay a producer to come in and be that involved and not use that person for what they could do best. And I thought my best trait, I enjoyed managing, in management. I enjoyed all that a lot. The promos are important to him because I was producing all the town promos for the live events. So I knew that at some point he would say, I'm going to put you back on the air. I need some help here or whatever. And I'd be right there ready to go. So it worked out well. I'm glad he gave me the opportunity, quite frankly.
It's an exciting opportunity to go back. Of course, it means you're back in the big time. You got your jersey back, but do you remember, as best you can recall, did Pat Patterson actually take a step back here? Because it feels like we heard that for like 15 years before it actually happened.
Pat, he took a step back. It wasn't quite as involved. Bruce was coming along real well. So that was, and Bruce was a student of Patterson's. So, I think that helped a lot for Vince. And Bruce and I never had any issues that I can recall, significant issues. And the thing about doing, working in a creative area like that, and anybody out there that's listening can understand and probably appreciate, you're not going to agree with everybody's idea. It's not a unanimous feel. So you have to manage that. And my first foray into that, I didn't manage it well. I was very outspoken. I'd speak up and tell people why something was not going to work. And sometimes I would have suggestions on how to remedy that. But there are times when I didn't have a suggestion to remedy it. I was just pointing out what I thought was wrong. And that's not good. That's not good business. So I had that behind me, not doing that anymore. And, but I knew eventually I was still young. I was still motivated. I still had the skills that I had. And, I knew it wouldn't last long. I'd either get fired again or relieved of my post. But somewhere along the way, I felt like I would get another opportunity to get back on the air and do my thing.
Well, you are going to be doing your thing, and I'm excited for us to talk about this next report. This is from January 7th, 1995 in the Torch. Last week, when word spread that Jim Ross had been hired by the WWF for a front office position, some were surprised. After all, it seemed he had left the WWF under less than ideal terms last summer when he refused to become a JR character behind the mic. Then, after he was hired back during the steroid trial for a temporary contract to host Raw and Challenge until McMahon's legal obligations were finished, he once again departed. But 4 months later, Ross has become one of the most powerful men in wrestling again. After finishing sixth in the 1992 Torch yearbook on the most influential listing, he dropped out of the list last year. Ross, who always has a desire for an on-camera exposure and front office power, appeared to be on his way to missing the top 10 list for the second year in a row. After all, he was announcing for SMW at small town TV tapings, which even he thought aloud was not exactly WrestleMania. The WWF, meanwhile, drew perhaps its worst string of houses on its post-Christmas swing through California. Cards headlined with Diesel and Bob Backlund drew around 2,500 folks 4 out of 5 nights. The WWF, despite reports of a strong Survivor Series buy rate in various trade journals, appeared to need some freshening up. Jim Ross was called in to inject some new life into the company's storylines. The WWF booking hierarchy in order of power and influence before Ross's hiring is as follows: Vince McMahon, Pat Patterson, Bruce Pritchard, Shawn Michaels, and J.J. Dillon. All sources indicate that Ross has been inserted high in pecking order, and Patterson has been moved down, with perhaps a leave of absence coming. Ross will become the executive producer of Monday Night Raw and contribute to the overall booking direction of the company. Some reports already say that Ross's direction will include an emulation of a popular policy in Japan of pushing several wrestlers on top who on any given night can beat one another. For instance, rather than pushing Bret Hart or Diesel as the lone babyface hero who fights constant streams of heels, Hart will share the spotlight with Diesel, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, British Bulldog, and Tatanka. So let's just take a time out right there. I love when they're saying, hey, man, he was out, and 4 months later, he's one of the most powerful men in wrestling again. That is the Jim Ross story. I love the booking hierarchy and all the implications, but I really wanted to ask you about the philosophy, because the WWF, by and large, had been, hey, here's Bruno. Hey, here's Hogan. And now in this point, we're trying to figure out what's our next hit going to be? Who is our next guy going to be? And Wade is giving you credit for saying it shouldn't be one guy. It should be several guys. And that feels like that's going to create sort of this new generation movement. Is that a Jim Ross idea?
Yeah. Yeah. I pitched it, and it was, I got cooperation from the rest of the guys. It's good stuff. You know, I just believe that you can't become one dimensional. And what you're looking for, Conrad, is you get these guys on TV, you use them in a positive manner, and see who gets over. Who, if you're given the opportunity and the TV time in a positive fashion, who's going to get themselves over? They got their break. They're not doing anything with me. They're not pushing me. I'm getting featured, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I looked at that deal. We had talents that we should be using to see if they could get over. And if they got over, then we win. If they didn't get over, then we move on to the next guy. And that's kind of how Cowboy booked. That's how Eddie Graham booked. I learned a lot from both those guys. That's all I did. We were one-dimensional or two-dimensional, and the chemistry between Backlund and Diesel, and all due respect to both guys who are friends of mine, wasn't good. They didn't have the chemistry, the natural chemistry that you would like to bet on. So it was to me, it was a no-brainer. And apparently, when I made my pitch, everybody seemingly agreed that it was, well, let's try it. And that's kind of what I told Vince is, what the hell do you got to lose? Why don't we try it? And he agreed, and it worked. And, Diesel got over and more. Razor got over more, for example. All those guys that you mentioned had found something. They found opportunity. They were excited about their opportunity. And so now, my pitch to them was, it's up to you to get over. We're going to put you on a platform where that's positive. And, I looked at Shawn Michaels as another Ric Flair. He's talent, big time talent, babyface or heel. He was just tremendous, and we weren't using him very well. And so we changed that.
We got to talk about, the whispers that are involved when you get this job. But I do want to talk about Kevin Nash, because people have been really critical of his run as champ. And everybody wants to talk about, oh, he's the worst drawing this or that. It's all about the money. But here's the deal. Public service announcement for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of BILT, you're about to thank me. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through BILT. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, even on your next rent payment. Let me break it down for you. If you're a renter, I'd start taking advantage of BILT if I were you. You can earn points on groceries, travel, and practically anything else we buy. Here's how it works. There's no cost to join BILT, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and all your everyday spending. BILT points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world where you can redeem your BILT points towards. Points can be redeemed towards a future rent payment and even unique experiences that only BILT members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, the question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbilt.com/JR. That's joinbilt.com/JR. That's joinbilt.com/JR. Be sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. That's joinbilt.com/JR. Start earning points on your rent today. Hey, let's talk about Kevin Nash, man. For better or worse, people talk about him as being the worst drawing WWF champion of all time. But my thought on that has always been, yeah, but the business was in the shitter. I mean, let's just be honest. The WWF's losing money here. This is when they're bringing, I mean, they're running high school gyms. They're bringing the water coolers in or out of the building just to save a few bucks. I mean, that's not a lot of money in a corporate office, the water coolers, but we're removing them here. We're counting pencils. Like we're down to the nitty gritty, but it was kind of like that when Big Daddy Cool got the belt, as best I can recall. And his first program was with Bob Backlund. Respectfully, that wasn't the right heel for him. That wasn't the right story for him, right?
Wasn't going to draw a dime.
No.
Wasn't going.
It's not Kevin's fault, is what I'm trying to get to.
No, it wasn't. Kevin was a very bright guy, but he endured it and went with it because that was his job. But it was a horrible booking. It didn't do him any favors whatsoever, and certainly didn't do the business any favors whatsoever. Well,
I want to ask
one thing. He's a 7-foot baby face.
Yeah.
And we had the same conundrum with Undertaker.
How do you get heat and make a sympathetic baby face when he's bigger than everybody?
That's right. So you got to make sure you pair them up. That's why when I hired Mick Foley, Mick's 6'4", and Undertaker is just under 7 feet, but it matched up well. And Mick could take bumps and wasn't afraid to take them and sell and be vicious and all that stuff. So it's a good marriage for those two guys. I saw it, I felt it, and then the other guys on the booking schematic and Taker, more importantly, probably agreed. Foley was a good potential opponent. Let's see how he does. And we all remember how Mick did with Undertaker. They drew a lot of money, Conrad, and things turned around immensely at that point in time. So you got a good dancing partner for your guys, and if you want to take care of that baby face and get him or her over, they got to be threatened. They got to have somebody that poses a legitimate threat to them, and we didn't have that ongoing. We just had wrestlers. Oh, put Tatanka against this guy or this guy against that. That it didn't make any sense. So we changed that philosophy and got better heels. Spent money on getting better heels that had size, because when you got a 7-foot champion and a 7-foot babyface and Undertaker, you got to be smart on how you book them with talents that are willing to be vicious, for you to come back in a big way and be dynamic. So we didn't have any dynamic talents. We had them, they just were cast wrong. In other words, they were booked wrong.
Man, the sympathetic baby face as the 7-footer, he could have been the 7-foot baby face chasing the title or the 7-foot heel champion. But yeah, the whole thing is just a mismatch.
Yeah.
Is there anybody, because I think what's been unfair to Kevin is when people say, oh, he's the worst drawing champion. Okay, let's just table that for a minute. Who could they have put the belt on here that would have just turned business around, and boy, it just would have been gangbusters? That doesn't exist, does it?
Maybe Sean.
Really? You think doing it with Sean in 95 would have done it?
Maybe.
Okay.
He was dynamic. He was creative. He could work with anybody, heel or babyface. But as a babyface, he sold so well that that would have helped him get over in a big way. And look, it happened. It just happened later on. But
it's interesting that it happens right before Kevin leaves, too. Of course, we know WrestleMania 12 is where Shawn Michaels becomes the world champion. It's going to be Kevin Nash's last WrestleMania for a while because he's headed to WCW. But when Shawn Michaels was, respectfully, when Kevin Nash was the WWF champion, they're number one, WCW's number two. When Shawn Michaels becomes the WWF champion, 2 months later, WCW's on top. Like, Now, I know that there's a whole different circumstance there. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash jumped. They had a great storyline. Hulk Hogan turns heel. The business is forever changed.
Right.
My point is, and I know that Kevin Nash gets criticized a lot. And, hey, if you didn't have a good experience and you don't like him, that's fine, whatever. I do like him. And I've always felt like he didn't get a fair rap, because the reality is, with the possible exception of Shawn, I'll give you that one. It's not like there's a big list of guys who would have just done gangbusters business. We had bad creative. It's not like we had bad talent. That's the reason you're coming back, Jim. You're going to fix it all.
Well, I don't know about that, but I had some suggestions that worked, and you just got to go with your gut sometimes. And Shawn was one of those guys that I thought had, just amazing skill set and potential. And he also had Vince's ear. I said, why don't you use that? You got influence. Use it, because you should be here, not down here, not in the middle, not in the upper third. And so the rap there was going back to the same old shit, man. Well, he's kind of small. Yeah. And your point, Buddy Rogers wasn't even 6 feet tall. He was at one time the hottest talent in the business. Vern Gagne was about 6 feet, maybe. There's a lot of examples. Dick the Bruiser was under 6 feet. You go to territory and find success in guys that are selling tickets, and none of them, or most of them, were not over 6 feet tall. Okay, so in other words, my point was, this can happen if they're booked correctly. And in the Bruiser's case, for example, he owned his territory, so he had an advantage. He had the pencil in his hand, and as Cowboy told me once, the most powerful wrestling hold in the business is the eraser on a pencil, and I never forgot that.
I want to ask you about your reputation in wrestling at this point, because I found this to be interesting. His bridge has been burned in WCW, and he's been the constant butt of criticism and jokes by front office employees and former announcing colleagues, most notably Jesse Ventura, although most venomously Tony Schiavone. He's been criticized for being a master manipulator by some, a persuasive, innovative booker by others. Boy, is that not just the story of wrestling? Yeah. Some people think, that the sun sets in your ass, and in the other half, boy, they just hate your guts. Like there's no in between, right?
It didn't seem like it. Probably both those descriptions, Conrad, are true. I was a manipulator. I understood how the game was played, and I reacted to it. I was a manipulator. Not proud of saying that, because it conjures up negativity. I appreciate the comments about my work. But that's what I hung my hat on. That's what I focused on more, was getting better at my work, and not the other bullshit. But I can tell you, the wrestling business is kind of like the mafia. You had to have your allies, and I was a made man, and I was going to treat it that way. I was going to try to enhance my role, and I did that as best I could, and it pissed some people off. It's ironic that the angst between Schiavone and me, well, that's simply professional jealousy. I didn't have anything to do with Schiavone's family or his home life. I got him a hell of a raise one time in WCW with Jack Petrick and Jim Hurd, $150,000 a year, and he was making 30 something. And he couldn't believe it. And because we got the same pay. It's just, they took him off the TBS Saturday night show, and that's what pissed him off. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him whatsoever. And today in AEW, when I see him, it's like a reunion. We get along famously. At least that's my feel for it. And I'm proud. He works he works his ass off. Really, truly does. He works harder than I'd want to work. I can tell you that, and does a good job. really good job. But I think that's just professional jealousy at that time of his life and my life, because I was a manipulator, and I don't have any regrets in saying that. But you had to do that to survive, but all along that journey, I produced. I had ideas, I had talent, on-air talent. So both those descriptions are probably accurate, but by the way.
We should spend just a second here, and I want to talk about some of the Pat Patterson isms. The WWF has been soundly criticized lately on record by wrestling writers and behind the scenes for some of the employees as being self-indulgent. Pat Patterson's trademark for booking has always been, in part, such out their ideas as the Doinks and the Bushwhackers, and with the recent hog farmer, trash man, and race car gimmicks that have drawn little, if any, interest to mainstream fans, some were questioning the competency of WWF booking. Others compliment the company for the gripping change in Backlund's character, which week after week takes new turns towards insanity. But the latest major move, switching the title from Brett to Backlund to Diesel, was controversial and thus far not a success.
Right.
If giving Diesel the title was meant as a last chance hotshot angle in order to inject some new life into the WWF house show business, well, it hasn't worked. His reactions in arenas has been underwhelming, perhaps because he's lost so much of his edge as a babyface, or perhaps Shawn Michaels was a major element of his pre-title reign popularity. Either way, Diesel has been a disappointment at the gate thus far, and the move to hire Jim Ross has to be considered one of the bigger moves in the WWF booking department ever. The loss of Terry Garvin during the scandals of the early 90s was inconsequential, as was the loss of Savage late last year. So listen, man, they're acting like this is one of the biggest things in the history of the company for you to come in and be involved in creative like this. Did it feel like a major move to you, or was it business as usual?
Business as usual. Business as usual, Connie. Pat was a brilliant man. And if you had two guys that are getting ready to work an event, you'd want Pat to outline their match for them and be the guy, the producer, the booker of that match. But what Pat did, he got tired. He was wearing down. So he went back to what he worked at one time, i.e. Backlund. You know, Backlund was a champion for years. Not a few months, not a few weeks, years. And he went back to, and he's probably done the same thing if Bruno was younger and healthier. He went back to what brought him to the dance. He danced with who brung him. And Backlund's days, he had an amazing transformation going from all-American boy babyface to a crazy guy that was eccentric and losing his mind, whatever. Because Bobby knew how to be a babyface. I'm not so sure that he was as good as a heel. I know he wasn't as a babyface. But Pat went back, and a lot of bookers do that. They went back to what brought them to the dance. And sometimes it worked, but more often than not, it didn't. So I always like to have Bobby on the cards, but I didn't see him on top anymore. I think that ship had sailed, and you got to love the guy. You know, one of my big things I've told you before is reliability, and Backlund was an old soldier that was going to be at work on time and ready to perform. And he was going to go out there and have the best match he could, but it seemed awkward, him being a heel. So there was really no natural fit there. So putting him with Diesel, who was also kind of green and had a different style, it just didn't match up. They were hearing, those two guys are hearing two different bands playing. Their music wasn't on the same page. And that showed in the matches, quite frankly.
Well, I'll tell you something that we love on the program here is our Tecovas boots. You're a big fan. I know I am. And if you've ever wondered if you could pull off a pair of boots with your sense of style, well, let me just tell you, you can. Tecovas has something for everybody. I wasn't a big boot guy, but I am now. I've got 2 pair of Tecovas. So does my dad. I got him not 1, but 2 pairs for Christmas. The ostrich skin was our go-to. I also got my dad the Chelsea boot. I just absolutely love them. He wears them to work every day. And there's a reason why Esquire loves them. They say there's a reason we keep coming back to Tecovas. And it's because whether it's a long day or a big night, your Tecovas are built to last and to impress. You see, every one of their boots from Tecovas are handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps for broken-in comfort that comes right out of the box. And this is a brand that was born in Texas just 10 years ago. And now Tecovas is easy for anyone to find their perfect boots, especially if you're a first-timer. I can't stress that enough. They even give you the Tecovas Best in the West guarantee, where you get free returns and exchanges for 30 days. I've seen guys in the office wearing boots with suits. That's a new one on me in Alabama. I know JBL and some other folks out in your neck of the woods have done it before, Jim, but man, people love how comfortable their Tecovas are. It's not just for special occasions. It's become a daily staple. And right now you can get 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr. When you sign up for email and text, that's 10% off at tecovas.com/grillingjr. tecovas.com/grillingjr. See site for details. Tecovas, point your toes west.
They're like wearing house shoes.
I love it.
They're just comfortable as hell from almost the first time you put them on. I've never worn a pair of boots, and I've got all the name brands over the years. My department store in Westville, I sold boots, so I kind of got a little bit of a background on them. But I've never, ever, ever put a pair of boots on that fit as well as these do from the first day you try them on. So if you like, even probably I'd say if you're not an expert in boots, if you are, you'll see that these are affordable and they're so comfortable. And that's the key thing. Tecovas is a great brand to try. Get you a pair, folks. Get you a pair and try them on, and see how you like them. That's what I'd do. And they sent me a pair, and day one, man, it felt like they were broken in and fit like a glove.
Check it out, man. Tecovas.com/grillingjr. You're going to get 15% off when you sign up for email and text. Man, you can't have a good time in bad boots. That's why you need Tecovas. Let's talk about now that you're going to be back, what does this new structure look like? According to Dave Meltzer, the new structure at the top is Vince McMahon is remaining as booker, but Pat Patterson has moved laterally, and he and Bruce Pritchard are in charge of writing the television, and Jim Ross will become McMahon's assistant. There have been tons of rumors regarding why Ross is being brought in, with most of the belief being that they want a more serious and less slapstick product, with a lot of people saying more Japan-like booking with winners and losers and more parity at the top among 10 guys rather than building around 4 Superman faces like they did last year. The only problem is to do the Japanese style and make it work, you need an audience that's educated to it as a sport rather than ice capades, which they don't have. And you do need writers who can perform the style, which only a few can. Do you remember that being part of the initiative you wanted? You wanted more of a serious approach to the business, because that does feel like that's your lane.
I wanted a sports presentation, Conrad, a presentation that felt real, that could make it easier to suspend your disbelief in the phony world of pro wrestling. And also the talent wanted it. The talent was motivated to go this style, work a little snugger, stay believable. And let's get rid of all the cartoon characters. And the irony is that some of those cartoon characters could work. They just were put into a different position. But Henry Godwin could work. Henry Godwin could work with Taker. He could work with anybody and be believable. But we weren't using him that way. Him and what was the kid's name? Dennis Knight, Phineas. Their big high spot was the slop bucket. That's it. And they were much better than that, but they weren't being used that way. So the cartoon stuff needed to go. The slop bucket's fine, but It's got to be more than that. You can't just have that anymore. And that's what my goal was, to try to give the fans more reality and realistic booking. You know, pro wrestling's got a bad rep anyway, Connie. You know, shit, they people want to, they know it's entertainment, it's staged, if you will. But we ain't got to be blunt about that. Let's add that. There's their elements, not the foundation. And that's kind of what we went to. And the boys liked it. They enjoyed that style, and they pulled it off. Talent should get a lot of credit for that.
It's such an interesting time in the company, because you're talking about the Godwins, and they came in November, and here you are just a couple of months later. And I do want to talk to you about what's written here. Does that sound right, that Patterson and Bruce are still going to be working on formatting the TV, and you're going to become, essentially, it's written here, assistant, but really, the way we've always called it, you're going to be Vince's right-hand man for a bit?
Yeah. That's what he wanted. And we had hours worth of talks. And I think our talks were, I don't know how to say it, but our talks were very focused, and Vince had the same goals. He wanted, let's have a serious product. You revert back to the seriousness of the old days without question. But how do we do it? How do we make that transition? And that was a challenge.
Let's talk about, that for a minute. Does your relationship with Vince change when you get this job? It feels like it has to, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Shane. He liked me again. He thought I was all right. So
did Bruce and Pat like you, or did they feel like you were invading their territory?
I'm sure there was a little bit of animosity, because I upset the formula. I interrupted the formula. I intruded on the formula.
I could totally see, Jim, in just the way wrestling works. Oh, great. Jim Ross has all the answers. Don't worry. He's here to save us all. He's the wrestling guru. Like, anytime somebody is brought in that wasn't there from day one or the whole time, there's this perception that this person's being brought in to turn things around, which almost implies, hey, you fucking idiots don't know what you're doing. But this guy, I mean, that's a heat position, right?
Yeah. That's kind of the way it was.
Yeah.
But over the years, Pat and Bruce, I would say, both accepted me for what I was bringing to the table. And Vince accepted me there strongly enough to make me the head of talent relations, because then I really had some mojo. I was hiring talent, and I was hiring talent in my image and what I wanted. We've talked about this before. We sent Brock Lesnar, who was not a cartoon character. We sent Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton and Dave Bautista and Shelton Benjamin, John Cena, all those guys to OVW. And they trained under Cornette, Danny Davis, and company. And those guys did a hell of a job, but the talents were green and young and guys I just signed. And we wanted to get them into the right place at the right time to enhance their abilities and to get them up to speed. And that worked out real well. I mean, all I'll say on that topic is look at the results. How many WrestleManias did those guys I just named headline? So I think we're on the right trail, and nothing's perfect, but I thought we were getting closer to what we needed to have. And then we hired a mid-card semi-main event guy named Steve Austin, and he got over. And then I hired Rock, and yes, he got over. So that theory, that style that game plan started to work. And I think it led to some great success and some great income. And those guys were making tons of money. And the guys underneath them that they were working with made tons of money. I remember one year, Connie, that Road Dogg made over $1 million. And he wasn't in the main events, but he was an integral part of what we were doing, he and Billy Gunn. So it worked. And we didn't have one star. We had several. And it worked out real well. I was proud of those guys. They delivered when they were called upon. When the game started and they were put in the game, they delivered.
Was being the executive producer for Raw ever actually in the cards? I don't remember ever seeing that except for this report that you were going to be called the executive producer for Raw.
I think Vince is the executive producer of Raw.
Yeah, I thought
without question. Not me. I had a hand in it. I suggested things, but so did Pat and so did Bruce. I think Vince was smart enough to get the best out of all of us in our areas of expertise. And those areas of expertise were different from one guy to the other. So that's how that worked. It was a team effort, but I was part of the team and I had Vince's ear. Having Vince's ear was a good thing for me. And I think it worked out good for Vince and the company.
Didn't work out good for Charlie Min. He's going to be let go here, and you're going to be doing the announcing with Todd Pettengill for Action Zone. You guys lack commentary, and it's written in the Observer that you're trying to do wrestling commentary, but Pettengill's trying to crack bad jokes, and you don't even really acknowledge them.
Right.
And, the Observer says that you guys have no chemistry together, and they're not sure what to really do with Todd. And we know that Todd, for whatever reason, had a little bit of heat at the time, depending on who you asked in the company, because from what I understand, he was a hugely successful radio broadcaster in New York City, and this wasn't his full-time gig. And what was it about you and Todd that just didn't click? His lack of product knowledge, or him trying to treat it more sort of tongue-in-cheek funny, and you were more just serious, or what was it?
Both those things, quite frankly. The irony of that is that we got along great. He's a good guy, and he was intelligent and funny, but he didn't have a lot of product knowledge. And he looked at wrestling like it was a comedy, some kind of comedy series or something along those lines. We didn't have good chemistry, and that's part of my fault. I should have loosened up, as they say in the wrestling business, but I had my style. I thought it worked for me and it worked for the business. So I steered the course, but during that course, we didn't have great shows. We didn't have great shows together, and not because we didn't like each other. In the beginning, when I worked with Ventura, I didn't like Ventura. I was jealous of him making a lot more money than me, maybe double, and working part-time. So, and then over the years, we've settled that. I've apologized to Jesse. He's accepted that apology, and it was my fault. I was just jealous, and I'm embarrassed to say that here on the air, but, I felt like our pace should be more closer together, I guess. But it was just jealousy on my end. Jealousy's a bad thing, man. So
ego gets us all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier about Tony.
Hey, I wanted to bring that up because it's in the Observer. Many in WCW are noting just how much easier Tony Schiavone is to deal with now that JR has been hired back by Titan. Although it wasn't obvious Ross wouldn't be hired back anytime because even though it was obvious that Ross would not be hired back to WCW anytime soon because Bill Shaw never forgave Ross for doing the double cross on the radio show when he left the company in '93. Plus, when he got a release, he indicated he was leaving the wrestling business to return home to Oklahoma, when it's believed in actuality he had already signed with Titan. Schiavone was always paranoid of that happening because so many, in particular the TBS programmer Jeff Carr, were known for wanting Ross in Schiavone's spot. So I know this is all water under the bridge for you and
Yep.
Tony at this point,
Yep.
but I do believe that Tony held a bit of a grudge against Steve Beverly for years because I guess he told Carr that he felt like you should be leading the TBS announcers and not him. And it seems like Tony, sort of transferred some of that to you. And I know that's out of self-preservation, but did you believe that you double crossed Bill Shaw when you said you were going to Oklahoma and you actually wound up going to Titan? Were you working a gimmick, brother?
No, I don't think I had a deal at that time.
Yeah.
I was going to go back home to Oklahoma where my family was. I had plenty of opportunities there, especially in radio, and maybe doing some pickups to gigs here, there, and yon in sports. But I don't think I double crossed him at all. I think the son of a bitch double crossed me, and I didn't feel any loyalty to him. I don't know how he treated me. He told me, Bill Shaw told me, that anybody could be a wrestling announcer. And the illustration that he used, Conrad, was Donald Duck could be a wrestling announcer.
Yeah, not good.
It's that simple. And that offended me because I took pride in my work, in my job, and the skill set it took to pull it off. So that just showed me that he didn't have a clue. And I still believe that. He didn't have a clue. If he hadn't been joined to the hip with Ted, things could have been a lot different. But as life is more often than not, Connie, it all worked out good. It worked out fine.
It worked out exactly like it was supposed to. Of course, you were supposed to continue with Smoky Mountain, just working one day a month, but by February, the WWF schedule is already too challenging. So after you do that February TV taping, that's the end of you in Smoky Mountain, and you're back where you belong in the WWF. 1994 is probably the rockiest year of your career up to this point. Wouldn't you agree?
Probably. Yeah, probably. It's challenging at times. You really had to love your job, but you wanted your job to love you back. And that's what I was always waiting on, for the job to love me back. So, but I'm just an old school guy. I'm a tough thinking guy. I knew that my work was good, or I thought it was. Others thought it was, that knew probably more about it than me. So I felt like, at some point in time, I'm going to be okay. Just steer the course and don't give up. And, the Bell's palsy didn't do me any favors. But that's what Mark Madden's two-faced remark was about. Mark was a shock jock, and he was a shock personality. That was his style. That's what he hung his hat on. So, people can say what they want. I was happy. I was making money, I was saving money, and I was living a nice, comfortable life with a wonderful woman. And so that shit just didn't stick too long. I had bigger fish to fry, quite frankly.
95 is coming right on time. The company's going to introduce In Your House. Monday Nitro is going to be announced. Lawrence Taylor is going to come into the company. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about 1995 here on the show. But next week, we're going to be talking about the Royal Rumble 2004. It's an infamous night in Philadelphia where Chris Benoit wins a match that sets up WrestleMania 20. We also get Brock Lesnar and Hardcore Holly getting in the ring after the whole issue they had with the injury. Triple H will be defending the world title against Shawn Michaels in a last man standing match, and a whole lot more. That's all happening next week here on Grilling JR. If you haven't already, go hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live. That's grillingjr.com. And while you're on your internet web browser, while you got your Google machine out, type in jrsbbq.com. They've got something for everybody, including JR's brand new book. 2 types of barbecue sauce. You got the hot sauce. You got the main event mustard. You got the Chipotle ketchup. The all-purpose seasoning is my favorite. But if you're looking for signed memorabilia, autographs, merch, even something good to eat, it's all at jrsbbq.com. And as my pal says, it costs nothing to look. Right, Jim?
Not a damn thing's free. I signed, when I was in Oklahoma over the holidays, I signed a bunch of items, books, pictures, and I think some action figures. They did a real nice job on the action figures. AEW did. So they're there, whole array of different items for you collectors and for you fans. So, and as Connie said, it don't cost a damn thing to look. You might see something on there you like. I can promise you, if you try our sauce, it's going to be good. This big snowstorm is supposed to come into Jacksonville. I'm stocked up. I got plenty of groceries to take care of myself. And I find, even if I get something on Uber Eats, for example, I can add a little seasoning to it, or some sauce, or some ketchup. That ketchup makes a great steak sauce. So I hope y'all try it. That's all. Just give it a shot. What do you got to lose? The bottle of sauce ain't going to break you.
Check it out, jrsbbq.com, and set your calendars, boys and girls, because Grilling JR is coming right on time next week when we're going to be talking about the Royal Rumble just a few days before the Royal Rumble. We're going all the way back to 2004, and we'll see you next week right here on Grilling JR with the voice of professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
And Conrad, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be coming to England. That's going to be a big thing. Coming to UK, I'll get my verbiage down, and that's I'm really looking forward to that. You know, Conrad and I were there together. I've been there once before by myself. This is a solo trip. I wish you were going, Conrad.
Man, you're going to have so much fun. ITRwrestling.com is where you can get those tickets. Kenny McIntosh does a great job. Go see Jim Ross inside the ropes at ITRwrestling.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today. And hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.